There are rare moments in politics when silence speaks louder than speeches, when the air in a room feels like it's waiting to witness something unforgettable. That's exactly what unfolded last Wednesday inside a Senate hearing room in Washington, D.C. No shouting, no theatrics, just Representative Jasmine Crockett, calm and focused, walking in with a binder and a purpose. There were no flashing cameras trailing her, no entourage announcing her presence. Just quiet attention. The room full of reporters, lawmakers, and staffers seemed to pause, sensing something different. Across from her sat Governor Kristi Noem, polished, prepped, and prepared for what she expected to be another routine session. Her aides had spent hours rehearsing responses, handing her polished phrases and ready-made rebuttals. But what they couldn't prepare her for was Jasmine Crockett. The moment Crockett took the mic, the energy in the room shifted. She didn't raise her voice or interrupt. Her questions were sharp, deliberate, and grounded in fact. She began with a simple premise: accountability. Her first question? A calm inquiry into Governor Noem's recent trip to the UAE. While Noem's office labeled it as personal travel, Crockett presented evidence showing the trip included meetings with foreign investors and officials. With a steady voice, Crockett asked, "Would you still consider that private?" Noem tried to keep it light, calling it a personal development trip. But Crockett didn't flinch. "This wasn't about funding," she said. "It's about the nature of the meetings you held. This wasn't a vacation. This was unofficial diplomacy, with no oversight." Noem shifted slightly, offering vague justifications. But Crockett calmly pressed forward, pointing out how donors who were present on that same trip had soon after maxed out contributions to Noem's Political Action Committee. When asked if she recalled those donations, Noem hesitated. "You don't remember who gave you the maximum legal donation?" Crockett asked, not accusingly, just factually. That question didn't need volume. It landed with precision. But that was just the beginning. Crockett's approach wasn't about catching headlines. It was about substance. She wasn't grandstanding. She was building a case. As she moved on to campaign spending and questionable payments to consulting firms tied to Noem, the governor's responses became less confident, more rehearsed. Then came the real pivot point. Crockett asked about transparency, something Noem had often spoken about publicly. But when confronted with recent denials of public records requests by Noem's office, the governor stumbled. Crockett's follow-up was piercing but polite. "Is denying access to government contract consistent with your message of transparency?" Noem offered explanations about security concerns and legal reviews, but the cracks were showing. Crockett didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. Her calm demeanor amplified the weight of her words. "Who decides what qualifies as a public interest?" she asked, flipping through a letter denying journalists access to documents. Noem's gaze drifted toward her counsel, and Crockett's next line made the room still again. "So when the public asks for basic access to information, why is the default answer no?" By then, the hearing wasn't just about policy. It was about principle. The contrast between the two women was striking, not just in style, but in substance. While Noem clung to talking points, Crockett demonstrated command of facts, of context, and of the room itself. Outside the chamber, clips of the exchange were already circulating. But it wasn't virality Crockett was after, it was accountability. And what made it so compelling was that she did it without raising her voice. She simply refused to be deflected. By the end of her questioning, Governor Noem appeared less certain, her words less firm, her posture more guarded. Crockett had done what few do in these settings. She held power to account, without spectacle and without giving a place to hide. There's a certain tension that fills the air when someone in power realizes they've lost a room and there's no saving it. But this moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, calculated, and that's what made it so unsettling. Jasmine Crockett wasn't looking for applause. She wasn't driven by emotion. Her questions didn't pierce because they were shouted. They landed because they were impossible to dodge. The turning point wasn't theatrical. It was precise. Crockett paused, not to collect herself, but to let the gravity of the room settle. Then she turned a page, calmly slid a transcript across the table, and began her final round of questioning. "This is from a recent town hall you held in Rapid City," she said, addressing Governor Noem. "You stated that South Dakota rejects federal overreach, that your state stands on its own." Noem agreed, nodding. It was a proud declaration she'd made before. But Crockett followed with a document proving that, just 5 days after that statement, Noem's office had filed for an additional $3.4 million in federal infrastructure subsidies from the same agency she had publicly criticized. The room inhaled. Crockett's voice stayed steady. "Was that funding request submitted with your knowledge?" she asked. Noem tried to spin it. "We apply for resources that benefit our residents." But Crockett didn't blink, even if it means contradicting your own stance on federal control. "I don't see it that way," Noem replied. "I know," Crockett answered, "but the record does." That sentence didn't raise volume. It raised the stakes. It framed the entire exchange with one undeniable truth, that Noem's principles seemed to shift when money was involved. There were no outbursts, just creaking chairs, eyes shifting, silence stretching. Noem tried to defend herself. "If you're implying dishonesty—" "I don't need to imply it," Crockett interrupted softly. "The paper trail speaks for itself." The moment rippled far beyond that room. Viewers watching live gasped. Online, the clip was already going viral. But Crockett didn't seem to notice. She remained poised, flipping to the next page. The next topic? Out-of-state hiring. "You've stated you prioritize local appointments," Crockett continued. "So, why was your latest economic advisor recruited from an Arizona-based firm with no links to South Dakota?" Noem hesitated, then offered a vague reply about expertise and qualifications. But Crockett was ready. "Even though your campaign pledged to put South Dakotans first." "That's an oversimplification," Noem said. "No," Crockett replied. "It's your campaign's own wording." The impact was immediate, not just in views, though millions watched that exchange overnight, but in how people perceived the power dynamics. Noem, once confident, now looked unsteady. Crockett remained centered. And then came the final blow. "Governor," Crockett said almost gently, "you told a radio station that every public dollar is accounted for, that your administration doesn't hide behind vague language or off-book spending. Is that still your position?" "Yes," Noem said quickly. Crockett nodded. "Then explain this." She held up a single sheet of budget data. It revealed over $2 million allocated to state security consultation and outreach. Vague, undefined, and deeply unclear. And when Crockett's team looked closer, one name stood out: Prairie Vista Strategies, a shell company with no office, no website, and no list of employees. Its registered agent? A longtime donor to Noem's campaign. The room froze. Crockett asked, "Can you explain how a company with no track record, linked to your campaign, received over $600,000 in public funds?" Noem looked down. "The Department of Public Safety handled that contract," she said. "But your office authorized the payments?" A pause. "Yes." And then silence. A long, weighty silence that didn't need a single word to make its point. The kind of silence that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. Crockett leaned in, not to intimidate, but to ensure the question couldn't be avoided. "Do you understand how this looks to the public?" Noem, visibly shaken, tried to maintain composure. "I'll review the contract." Crockett, unwavering, replied, "You had the chance before today. You knew this question was coming." No answer. That single sentence, "I don't have that explanation on hand," became the moment no spin could repair. It echoed not just in that room, but across every screen, in every headline, in every replayed clip. And Crockett didn't react. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply rested her hands on the desk and looked forward, not angry, not smug, just disappointed. The rest of the hearing continued, but everyone knew it was already over. The moment had passed, and nothing said after could undo what had just happened. Outside, news outlets scrambled. Social media exploded, and viewers, young and old, shared the clip with captions like, "This is what accountability looks like." TV panels debated what went wrong for Noem. Analysts broke down the hearing frame by frame. Experts called it a masterclass in composure. TikTok teens lip-sync Crockett's most pointed lines like they were courtroom monologues. And yet, Crockett herself didn't chase the spotlight. She left quietly, answering no questions, walking the halls of the Capitol with the same calm that had stunned the room hours earlier. Governor Noem, in contrast, exited through a side door, avoiding cameras and questions. In the following days, local reporters in South Dakota picked up where Crockett left off. They uncovered more troubling details about that mysterious contract. A newly formed LLC. No address. No trace of legitimate operations. Crockett wasn't even mentioned in some of the follow-ups. She didn't need to be. Her work had already set the wheels in motion. Back in D.C., she returned to her usual schedule. No late-night interviews, no victory lap. She attended committee meetings, met with advocates, and kept reading bills. But everywhere she went, people remember that one line. I don't have that explanation on hand. It wasn't just a soundbite. It was a symbol. A reminder that accountability doesn't always come from anger or outrage, but from discipline, preparation, and asking the right question at the right time. Behind closed doors, even Crockett's critics admitted it. She had done her homework, and she didn't back down. When asked later what her goal had been, Crockett was direct. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to make sure the public knows someone is watching. That questions are still being asked, and that silence is never a good enough answer. And in that silence, she said more than words ever could.